Hi, my name is Monika Wieland and I'm the director of the Orca Behavior Institute. There's been some news recently about a couple of the southern resident killer whales, and since I've seen some questions circulating about just what's going on, I thought we would make a short video to update you on what we know. Back on July 27th, members of J's, K's, and L's all made their way into inland waters, some of them for the first time in several months. We saw many of the whales from the west side of San Juan Island that evening, including K16 and K35, who often travel with K21. We did not get IDs on everybody present because the whales were so spread out, many whales were really far offshore, and light was fading quickly. So we weren't super concerned that we didn't see K21 at that time. But the next day, the whales were already leaving the area, heading west back out the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Late in that afternoon, a report came in of a severely emaciated male southern resident killer whale near Race Rocks in BC. From videos and photos, researchers were able to confirm that this was K21 and he was in very poor condition. He's a 35-year-old male and he was very emaciated, and his tall adult male dorsal fin had completely collapsed. So it was a very difficult thing to see and not at all the kind of news that we wanted to have accompany the return of the southern residents after such a long absence. The Center for Whale Research is the organization that officially documents the births and deaths of southern resident killer whales. By their protocol, they have to encounter the whales that K21 normally travels with without him present to officially document his death. It's important that they continue to follow the protocols that they've followed in their 40-plus years of research, but at the same time, it's pretty safe to say that given what K21 looked like, that he is probably gone at this point. Without his body having been recovered, we will never know specifically what caused the death of K21. There's a lot of speculation that's been out there. Some people said because he looked so malnourished, he starved to death, but that's likely an oversimplified answer. While he was in very poor condition, it could have been a disease or an injury that led to him not feeding so well and led to him being so skinny. And the fact that the other whales that he was with seemed to be in fairly robust condition, as far as we can tell, seems to indicate that it was something pretty specific to K21. There were also some media articles that speculated he might have died from cancer. While it's a remote possibility this is the case, there's no evidence that that was his cause of death. No diagnostics were done on him at all. He was not seen for several months prior to being seen in this state, so we don't know why he declined or how quickly he declined or what it was that led to him being in this severe state. As difficult as it is, we probably just will never know what exactly killed K21. We've heard some people say that K21 died young at the age of 35. While it's true that we know resident male killer whales can live up to several decades longer, like J1 Ruffles, who was thought to be 59 at the time of his death, the average lifespan of a male resident killer whale is about 30. And that's true for the southern resident killer whales, northern resident killer whales, the Alaskan resident killer whales. All the fish-eating populations in the Northeast Pacific have shown that to be about the same, so it's not just specific to the southern residents. We certainly hope and expect for some males to live longer than that, but it is just not true that K21 died at an unexpectedly young age. It's difficult whenever we lose a member of this population, especially because we know them so well as individuals, but in this case, we feel that K21 lived a full life. J56 Tofino is the 2-year-old daughter of J31. J-Pod returned to the Salish Sea on August 31st, the first time all members were really surveyed since back in April. They again reached the west side of San Juan Island after dark and made their way up into the Strait of Georgia, but on September 1st, several research teams were able to get on scene with them up there. That included SR3, the photogrammetry team that flies a drone over the whales to assess their body condition. In their images, they determined that J56's body condition had declined from when they had imaged her in July of 2020. This was concerning to them because she was looking small for her age and had gotten worse in the last year. SR3 notified WDFW, the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, about their concerns about J56. WDFW, under the new rules for licensing commercial whale watch vessels in Washington state, has the ability to designate whales as vulnerable, which means that whale watching vessels that are licensed cannot approach those whales to the allowed 300 yards during the permitted viewing windows of southern residents. In essence, this is pushing only commercial whale watching vessels back to that half-mile buffer that they're required to keep the rest of the year. The idea is to give extra space to whales that might be of particular concern. You may remember the dramatic case of J50 in 2018 and all the research and effort that went into medically diagnosing and trying to treat her before her death. We're not sure if there are any plans to repeat that type of scenario, but we do know researchers have been trying to build individual health profiles on specific whales. If we learn any more, we will definitely post an update about either the status of J56 or any plans anybody has to try and figure out in more detail what's going on with her. We just don't know at this point if J56 can recover. The only news of her declining condition came from SR3, and as of yet they haven't released any photos to show how severe her condition actually is. There are some juvenile whales that go through a skinny growth period at a few years of age. It sounds like this is more severe than that, but again, we don't know how bad she looks. We did talk to the Center for Whale Research, who got images of her on the same day from the side, and they did not observe peanut head on J56. That said, the aerial images from above do give a much better assessment of body condition, and they're comparing her condition to the way that it looked a year ago, so it sounds like she has gotten worse. But without knowing specifically what's wrong with her or what her current condition really is, we just don't know what her chances of recovery are. Typically, when SR3 designates a whale in poor condition, it means that they have an increased chance of mortality in the coming months. Some whales have recovered from that condition and grown more robust in the months and year that follows. Others have indeed perished, so we'll just have to wait and see. Personally, I'm much more alarmed at the news about J56 than I was about the news of K21. Like I said, it's heartbreaking no matter what happens when we lose or have extra concern about one of the southern resident killer whales. But J56 is a young female, an absolutely key individual for the future reproductive health of this population. So we definitely hope that she's able to recover. We know that the whales were actively foraging off the mouth of the Fraser River, and we've heard both earlier this year from SR3 and from researchers that were able to get on scene with them a few days ago that they did for the most part look pretty robust. So while we can't say for sure for J56, just like we couldn't with K21, we don't know what has led to the decline in her condition, but we're hopeful that if lack of food has played any role up to this point, that they're able to feast this month off the mouth of the Fraser River. There's been an interesting correlation in recent years of all three southern resident pods coming together in the Salish Sea during times of births and deaths in the population. We saw it around J50, we saw it around the birth of J57 and J58, potentially the decline of K21, and now people are wondering if the same thing is happening with J56. And while we do think that greeting ceremonies, a cultural behavior unique to the southern residents, sometimes also accompany perhaps parting ceremonies where they're losing a member from the population, the truth is the southern residents come into the Salish Sea for many reasons, and the primary thing that used to draw them here on a regular basis was the Chinook salmon returning to the Fraser River. Typically, we would expect all three pods to be here this time of year. And the summer and late summer and fall Chinook salmon runs returning to the Fraser have actually been pretty strong. So we're hopeful that the reason they've been around in recent days is because they're following those runs of fish in like they've done for many dozens, hundreds, perhaps even thousands of years. Sometimes I would definitely believe that the whales all gather to celebrate a birth or honor a death, but they also come all together to socialize, to intermix and interbreed, to feast when the feeding is good, and to visit the Salish Sea, this really culturally important place to them. So, as with many things with these whales, we just can't say for sure. It's fun and interesting to speculate, but we'll just have to see how it all plays out. There were so many questions that I wanted to address here that we thought doing a short YouTube video would be the best way to share all this information. But YouTube is just one way that we try to get news out about the southern residents and other killer whales in the Salish Sea. So if you don't already, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram for the more regular updates that we post there. And all of our work, whether it be the research, education, or advocacy efforts that we engage in, is all funded off of your private donations. So please consider visiting us at patreon.com/orcabehavior to become one of our monthly supporters. We also host live stream chats with our patron supporters to discuss current issues and post updates on all of our encounters with both southern residents and Biggs killer whales. Thank you for watching, and we'll update you with more information as soon as we have it.